DarkPhoenix Gaming here, and welcome back to what is probably going to be the final episode of my playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 as the German Reich. And this is not going to be your standard episode, you see, because this is more of a playthrough analysis than actually me playing or anything, because at the stage I'm recording this, we're almost to the point where the next update is going to come out, and seeing as I'm using a decent number of mods, probably some of them are going to get updated pretty soon, which will make it impossible to continue this. I thought about continuing until I managed to take out the Soviet Union, but in the end I just decided not to, and this playthrough is going to end after this episode. There won't be an epilogue because there's pretty much no point of one. You know that I basically defeated the United Kingdom. I mean, sure, there are random colonies, and the British Raw and Malaysia and stuff are still in the fight, but that's not giving them much. And America is in on this, meaning that the Allies aren't going to capitulate. And we aren't going to actually get a peace deal, but the British have surrendered, even if a few of their territories are still a thing. Anyways, you basically know how this would unfold with the Allies. It would probably drag on for a couple of years inconclusively, and then the rest of them would get the hint that they weren't going to pull off a successful invasion of mainland Europe, especially bearing in mind that I control basically all of Western Europe and a bit of Eastern Europe, as well as most of the Middle East, and pretty much all of Africa not under the control of, like, Portugal or Liberia, for instance. So they would eventually get the hint that they weren't going to manage to successfully invade, and America would just drop out of the Allies, and I'd take everything, is how I would see that unfolding. Would probably take a while to get to there, though. I'm thinking like 10-15 years, maybe? And the game wouldn't last that long. But anyways, for the war against the Allies, there's really no point in continuing, and I wouldn't be able to force a peace because I would not be able to pull off a successful invasion of the United States, I don't think. Not even if I took over Iceland and Greenland. It would just kind of be pushing my luck. It was hard enough to get past the Royal Navy and land troops in our little front line that we had here in England. And frankly, at this point, I am convinced that the entire reason that we succeeded in taking over the British Isles here, the UK controlled part of it anyways, was sheer dumb luck. And just the fact that I had more divisions. So I was doing the Soviet thing of throwing divisions at them until they collapsed, basically. Is what I think was going on there. But I'm not going to continue this playthrough. To get back down to the point, this episode is a post-playthrough analysis where I'm basically going to talk about what I did that I think went well, what I think went poorly, and things to improve on in the future. Is the long and short of it. So, let's get started with that. So, starting at the very start of the game, I started building up my armies with troops along the border with Poland and France, knowing that they were going to be my early game adversaries, and I spent a bunch of time until I had some sizable armies waiting there before I actually went for the invasion. And as you know, going down the historical focused path of taking Rhineland, Anschluss, Sudetenland, and such, until we finally hit Danziger War, at which point Poland wasn't even a fight just because of how much I prepared. I effectively just moved in. And at the time I decided not to bother with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviets, doing it later when they started getting claims on Poland. But yeah, also putting some pretty heavy focus into more naval dockyards so we could build more ships better. I never did quite get down to modular construction, but I'm not sure how much benefit that would have gotten me. And the naval thing brings me on to something that I kind of screwed up, which is best emphasized in a comment I got on my episode 13 of this series very recently. And I'm actually going to read that to you word for word. This is by Wendy Delisay. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm not entirely sure about that. Anyways, what Wendy says is, you mentioned that your submarines were repairing slowly. The trick for repairing any large fleet quickly is to first split it into two twice to form 4 separate mini-fleets, then second to send each of the 4 mini-fleets to a separate naval base, and then third to recombine the 4 mini-fleets when the repairs are finished. The idea is to have 4 different naval bases working on repairs, therefore getting the repair work done 4 times as fast. Also, some submarines should operate alone. A lone submarine can sometimes, due to its stealth, sink an invasion before it happens. Try putting 1 submarine on convoy raiding duty in each sea zone that adjoins an Italian or German naval base, setting each submarine to repair upon light damage. The number of British and American invasions will drop by 1/3, as will supplies to an invasion that conquers an Italian or German naval base. Sinking enemy ships makes your own invasions easier. 180 or so of the 1940 era tactical bombers will do great damage to enemy fleets. In the Mediterranean Sea and the Baltic Sea, you had a lot of chances to use a small bombardment fleet to make your conquests much faster. Try this 5-ship composition. 1 heavy cruiser will do shore bombardments when the fleet is anchored at sea next to a coast. 2 light cruisers, excellent anti-air. 2 destroyers, excellent destroying submarines. Ideally, you should have 1 such fleet for convoy raiding, a 2nd such fleet as convoy escort, a 3rd such fleet for coastal bombardment, and a 4th such fleet ready on a just-in-case basis, I mean. You will need a lot of ships other than submarines being induced by the naval dockyards. The anti-air ability of these fleets will probably earn 1 or more of your admirals the fly swatter skill, improving an already inherently good anti-air ability. As you found out, Britain makes a lot of airplanes thanks to the abundant rubber of Ceylon and British Malaya, and Dutch Indonesia. Too many airplanes to be able to successfully invade Britain at this particular stage of the war. That's actually interesting, because as you can see, I did successfully invade Britain at this stage of the war. I'm not entirely sure how I did it. As I said, I just chalk it up to numerical superiority and sheer dumb luck, to be perfectly honest. As well as the fact that I'm 99% certain that the Americans were propping up the British for the majority of the fight, just because once I managed to rout the American divisions, which happened off camera, by the way, the British just sort of stopped being a real challenge for some reason. But back to the comment. Also, due to the soldiers that come from British India's large manpower, you also have many soldiers to fight in Britain. The only way to defeat Britain now is to help Italy put more emphasis on that high resource and high manpower region, and near the Indian Ocean, do sea invasions of every enemy holding in the Mediterranean region: Corsica, Sardinia, the Balearic Islands, and Gibraltar. If a resistance movement is present, leave a tiny single battalion division at every naval base and dockyard that is controlled by you or by Italy in a resistance area in order to avoid sabotage. Whether or not a resistance movement is present, leave 4 combat divisions in Gibraltar in order to avoid losing Gibraltar in a sea invasion from Britain or America. Once Italy is free from the naval threat, Italy will help you a little bit with your quest to conquer every naval base and naval dockyard in and near the Indian Ocean. When you conquer the rubber plantation region of Ceylon, make sure to leave a small single battalion division on the rubber icon, partly to avoid sabotage and partly to keep the rubber from the enemy as long as possible in case of a surprise enemy sea invasion. British Malaya has a much more valuable rubber icon, so be very sure to place a single battalion division there as well after you conquer the rubber plantation region of British Malaya. Okay, one thing I gotta mention about the conquer British Malaya thing in regards to this. That would not have been possible. For one very simple reason. I would have to go through Siam to do that. And Siam is allied with the Japanese, whom I have a non-aggression pact with, and whose independence I am guaranteeing. Thus, I wanted to march troops all the way across the British Raw after conquering that and do a naval invasion. And that is, so British Malaya was probably not going to fall to me. And in fact, I was rather hoping the Japanese would take it over because they declared war on British Malaya at one point. But their war with the Chinese never actually ended, which made that something of an issue. But back to the comment. Once all the rubber is taken, British and American airplane production will decline, and then Britain, and America can both be conquered. Britain first, since Britain is geographically much closer to your chosen Hearts of Iron 4 country of the German Reich than America is. Ultimately, the power of Germany's enemies lies in coastal regions of the East Indies. If Germany conquers the East Indies, world conquest happens almost inevitably in Hearts of Iron 4. World conquest happens if you get the East Indies. That's really interesting. I did not know that. But yeah, that's one of the most helpful comments I've gotten as far as learning new things about this, because I definitely kind of screwed up with my Navy. The Navy is not something I'm really all that experienced with in Hearts of Iron, so I'm inevitably still kind of working out how to do that whole thing. Unfortunately, so I'll have to bear that in mind for future playthroughs, but the fact that my Navy's composition was more than a little suboptimal, I'm almost sure that contributed heavily to the fact that I had such a hard time with the invasion of Britain. But as far as their air superiority goes, I actually didn't find they had much air superiority to speak of over me. Basically, the entire time during my invasion of the British Isles, I had air superiority over them after I relocated the appropriate air divisions to the right locations. So, with the exception of the initial bit where they had air superiority over the English Channel, they never had that because I have a stupid number of aircraft. I really do. Let's see if I can find some list of our current divisions or anything. Not sure where I'd find that, but we have a lot of aircraft right now. I'm not even kidding. And another thing that I just did not take advantage of, as you can see up here, my Army, Navy, and aircraft experience is just through the roof, just due to the amount of fighting that I did, and the fact that I had Eric fucking Manstein. Unfortunately, I just didn't take advantage of that to make any upgrades to any of my divisions and make better armies, essentially, and that was a big mistake. I could have upgraded my armies to make them a whole lot freaking better. The next thing on my list of mistakes, I would have to say, and some people might be shocked to hear this, is the fact that I invaded Turkey and tried to go through that whole region. I didn't need to go into the Middle East or Africa. The original idea was to both, one, get rubber through the Belgian and British colonies in Africa, because a few of them had a significant amount of rubber, and at the time I made that decision, I had a rubber, I was short about 60 rubber or something like that. So I really needed it, and that my idea was I would invade the Middle East and Africa and get it that way. Potentially also Iran into the British Raj, but I didn't want to do that if I could avoid it, because it would give me an even larger front against the Soviet Union. But the problem was, I kind of underestimated how long that something like that would take, just because of how horrible the infrastructure down in Africa actually is. It's absolutely horrendous. I think it took me sometimes up to a week to move to a single adjoining province. It was terrible. And since a lot of that territory went to either Vichy France or Italy, just due to the way borders work in the Hearts of Iron, I wasn't really in any position to do anything about that infrastructure. I couldn't upgrade it myself or make any improvements or anything, which was kind of a problem. Now, that was the next thing that I think I made a mistake on. That said, a lot of those conquests in Africa and everywhere did go fairly easily, just some of them were kind of pointless. The next mistake, and I'd say this was a fairly big one, I waited too long to invade Britain. I should have started work on an invasion of the British Isles basically as soon as France had capitulated. But I decided not to, and I think that was a pretty big mistake. I probably could have taken them a lot easier by that stage. At that point in time, I think it was like 1941, maybe 1942 at most. No, it was either 1940 or 1941 that France capitulated. If I'd started working on an invasion of the British Isles right then, could have got some troops down and just started working on it immediately. And it would have made things so much easier. But I didn't do that. I waited until 1943, at which point they had such a heavy number of troops in their home isles that I had to literally chew through them province by province, using nothing but numerical superiority to win that fight. And even then, I barely clawed out a victory. So yes, I think waiting as long as I did to invade Britain was one of my biggest mistakes. Those are the things that immediately come to mind as biggest mistakes in this series. But there is a minor one, which, while not necessarily a mistake, is something that I think if I'd avoided it, would have made my life a bit easier. Allying Italy. Italy in almost everywhere has gotten into a stupid number of battles and just engagements with the Allies where they are so in over their head, I have to come in and bail their asses out. And doing stupid shit that undermines my plans. Just to give you an example of the first thing, they invaded Greece. I had been perfectly content to leave Greece alone and let them stay neutral, even though I knew they would probably join the Allies at some point. I didn't want to invade Greece just because, in my experience, the mountains on the Greek border tend to be a bit of a nightmare to get over. And so I try to avoid invading Greece, and have done ever since a campaign I did as Italy, where Greece managed to resist my attempts to invade them from 1940 until 1945. I'm not even kidding about that. In this campaign I'm talking about, it took me 5 years playing as Italy to conquer Greece. That may be because I'm terrible, it may just be because Greece's mountains are that advantageous, I don't know. It was a bit of a nightmare. And Italy was losing that so badly, or at least they were getting pushed back a bunch, and I didn't want to risk them losing a bunch of Yugoslavia, because that could potentially be an issue. So I came in and had to divert an entire army to help them defeat Greece. So I really think allying Italy was a mistake. That and the fact that the peace AI is still a little bit broken, because it likes to give nations like Italy territory they haven't earned. To give you an example, this is probably around episode 7 or 8 this happened, if I remember right. It's in the episode that I titled, Then It Is War, where I started the war with Poland and the Allies. And what happened was, after I'd finished rolling over Poland, then moving on into Denmark, the Netherlands, and Belgium, I moved into France and basically crushed them. Italy had taken maybe 2 or 3 provinces on the border down here, and was just distracting the French army. I was doing basically all the real work up north, and when France capitulated, despite that, I got basically nothing out of it at first. I got the area surrounding Paris and a couple of regions. Hell, I didn't even get Alsace-Lorraine off of it, which was very annoying. Very, very annoying. Of course, then I got the event about the surrender of France and set up Vichy France, which gave me all that back and corrected the borders. but I'm still not especially happy that it happened in the first place. And that is one of the reasons why I think that allying Italy was not an especially good idea. Of course, they partially redeemed themselves down in Africa, where once I got their territory back for them, they actually became somewhat competent, and even took out South Africa for me. Which is kind of nice. But as you can see, they don't know how to manage suppressing dissent, really. At least down really far. Or maybe they do, I don't know. Anyways, I maintain that allying Italy was a pretty bad decision, because I've consistently had to divert troops to help them out. And although they did beat it back, they even let the British take parts of mainland Italy for a time, and failed to hold on to Sardinia and Corsica, even though they controlled the entirety of both for a time. Italy is just terrible, and I may avoid making alliances with Italy in the future. I really wish that I could just make them my puppet state or something, as opposed to having them as an ally, I mean. Because they've not been that helpful. If anything, I should have known better. But as to things that I think went really well in this campaign, because this is not just a case of me saying how I did terribly. Things that I think went really well. Obviously, the initial build-up was pretty effective because I managed to get all my guys into position and was able to just overwhelm the allies on the mainland very, very quickly. As well as Scandinavia. Taking over Sweden was probably my best decision because I don't actually know if it's possible for the Allies to convince a country to stop trading with me or something, but I was kind of paranoid that it was. So basically, early on in like 1939, pretty much all of my tungsten ore was coming through trade with Sweden. And I was worried that the Allies would somehow manage to disrupt that trade. So I invaded them so I could secure it. And I have basically not had to worry about tungsten much, if ever, since I did that, so it really was a great decision. Besides that, just how quickly I took down France has to be the other thing. And even though I kind of didn't want to be involved in Africa after a while, and was just kind of pushing on, how we got to the point the Axis basically controls all of Africa. That was definitely a special one. For sure, Z's. But yes, that is my analysis of this campaign as it went. I really should have attacked Britain sooner, I think is the main thing also, because America joined in. America joining the Allies didn't happen until it was like a couple of weeks, I think, possibly even a couple of days, before I invaded the British Isles. So, if I had invaded sooner, and I could have avoided the America thing and actually gotten the damn peace treaty. But this is going to be where this series comes to a close, because, as I said, the expansion is releasing in a couple of days. Sorry, a couple of days? A couple of hours, even. The expansion is releasing in a couple of hours. And this is where I am ending this campaign. But fear not, I will be returning to Hearts of Iron 4 in the future. It might even be fairly close by in time. I have a poll up right now to decide what Let's Play should replace this. Check in the description of my last update video, and you will find it there. So please go vote on that. I only have 2 votes so far, and it's currently tied between another Hearts of Iron 4 campaign and Metro 2033 Redux, so please vote on that. In any case, this has been DarkPhoenix Gaming. Thank you very much for watching my Let's Play of Hearts of Iron 4 as the German Reich. If you've enjoyed this, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to see more like this. Thank you so much for watching this series. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again for whatever video of mine you decide to watch next. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you soon. So long for now.